All right, so you're a registered nurse and you want to get into aesthetics and you want to do it by getting hired in the industry. That's what today's video is about. Come along for the ride. All right, so you're a registered nurse, you're sick of the day-to-day grind, being at the hospital, doing night shifts, working weekends, working holidays, and you thought, I've got a buddy who is in aesthetics and he or she is killing it. I want to get in there too, right? 100% dive into it. And there's one of two ways of getting in there. You can start your own business or get hired on by an existing business. Today's video, we're going to focus on getting hired on as an existing business, what that looks like for you. Check out some of our other videos where we go through the step-by-step process on either starting your own business or getting hired on as well. But for today, let's focus on getting hired on. So what does it look like to go from bedside nursing or clinic work to the aesthetic industry and getting hired on with somebody else? Well, the first step is you're going to have to find a job, okay? And if you find a job that's posted in the med spa world, you'll have to go in, you'll have to talk to, usually the provider is the one that owns and operates the clinic. If not them, then the office administrator. And you'll have to go in and you'll have to plead your case and, apply like any other job that you'll have. Now, the hard thing about getting into aesthetics is oftentimes clinics want to hire someone with experience, okay? And if that's the caveat, then you got to get a little bit of experience underneath your belt, which is really hard when you're not working for yourself. What does that look like? You have to go get some training. You have to pay for a course, usually between $3,000 and $6,000. Get that training, and then have some sort of mechanism to where you're working on that what you learned. Now, I'm not saying that a business will hire somebody without any experience. They do all the time. I've done both in my practice. I've actually hired a nurse that had zero experience in aesthetics, and I also hired a nurse that had some experience in aesthetics. All right, in my clinic. So it can go both ways. If you don't have experience and you go to a med spa or another clinic and you get hired on and you don't have experience, what are they going to do? They're going to make you sign a contract saying that if you leave in an X amount of time, you'll have to repay all the money they spend on your training. All right. Because they're going to have to put you through some sort of training course, either in office, which costs money, or send you to a certified trainer somewhere which also costs money. So typically the onboarding to get you trained in aesthetics is between $5,000 and $15,000 in continuing education. Now, the owner of the practice that you might be working for should be willing to pay for that, okay? But if they're smart, they're going to make you sign a contract saying that you're going to repay that over the next, if you leave for any kind of reason. So be understanding of that process. Why do they make you sign that contract? Because they don't want to spend all the time and effort training you just for you to jump ship and go across town and work for somebody else. All right. The other thing they might do is make you sign a non-compete. All right. Non-competes were enforceable up until last year, and then they made some regulatory changes, Xing non-competes. Well, those just went through the Supreme Court or some district courts, and they've already said that non-competes still are both lawful and can be enforced as well. So if you work for a med spa, they'll likely make you sign a non-compete, which says you can't work within 5, 10, 15 miles radius of this business. So you can really limit your future prospect if you sign a non-compete. Okay. In my clinic, everybody signs a non-compete now, and they also sign the contract saying that they will repay any kind of funds that I use on their education. All right. So be understanding that those two things are likely going to happen when you go and work for somebody in the aesthetic industry, especially if you don't have experience. Now, if you come with some experience, they're probably not going to make you sign the training, but they probably still will make you sign a non-compete. So if your plan is to someday open up your own business, you'll want to make sure that you'll be able to as you exit working for somebody else. So those are some considerations to think about when you're going and working for somebody in the industry. The next question I get from nurses all the time is, what can I expect to get paid? All right. I've seen this all over the board. Here in my area, I'm in the Boise, Idaho area. I know of a nurse that went and worked for a competitor down the road from me, and they offered her $30 an hour plus commissions, and her commissions were starting 3% of gross revenue sold. So a typical injector can make anywhere between $500 and $1,000 of revenue or more per hour. You can get 3% of that. So let's just say it's $1,000 an hour. You're going to make an extra about $30 on top of your base rate. And I typically see when you're working for somebody else, you end up in that 70 to $80 an hour range on average. Not to say you'll have good hours where you can make, a buck 50 or more, but typically that's kind of where I see. And the longer you're in with the business, typically they'll bump that up. So if you have a lot of experience, they'll go from 3% to 4%. Typically it will max out anywhere between 7 and 8% of your gross revenues. All right. So that sounds wonderful. You're working for somebody else, right? They're paying for your insurance, they're paying for your salary, they're paying for your training. What's the bad thing? The bad thing is there's just not a lot of jobs out there. Okay. For a clinic to justify bringing on another nurse, they have to be in a growing phase and they have to be willing to take on somebody and have the funds available to pay them as well. So I get asked routinely, if not weekly, monthly, by somebody that wants a job in my clinic. And frankly, I just don't have the growth to bring on somebody once a month. Okay. It'd be wonderful if I could, but it just doesn't happen. So the jobs are few and far between in the industry. You'll be able to find them, but just be conscientious that it might be hard to get into. Okay. So that's strategy number one of getting into it. Go find a job in it. If that sounds too complicated or you're just having a hard time finding that perfect job, then what I recommend is strategy two, which is start your own LLC, start your own business, and do this as a side hustle and get experience. You'll have to pay for training. You'll have to get everything set up. You'll have to, as far as legal, get your business set up. You're going to have to get an EMR. You're going to have to get malpractice insurance. All of those things to start your own business. But the nice thing is that your profits are your own. Like what you make is going to go into your pocket, and you're not limited to that 3, 5, let's call it as high as 10% um, revenue sharing. Okay, what you make is your own to get, and then you can be as busy as you want to be. Start working your network, get out there, and start injecting people. And it doesn't have to be super crazy. I mean, you can do this out of the comfort of your own home. You can go to people's houses, you go to businesses. There's lots of different ways of being an injector and not having what we call a brick and mortar, a physical location that you have to rent and staff and have employees and things of that nature. So I always encourage nurses to get in on their own and do it themselves rather than trying to find a job, because I just know how hard it is to find a job in the industry. So if this is a dream of yours and you're a nurse and you want to get into aesthetics, those are the two avenues that you could take. Check out some of our other videos. We actually walk through those process, like, hey, these are the different steps on both of those avenues. And you can click the link below and see that video as well. But don't be discouraged. Go for it. If it's your dream, don't wait. I hear all the time, oh, maybe in 2 years. Why wait 2 years? If you hate where you're at now, start the process now and you'll be 2 years ahead. All right. But whatever you do, dive into it, go after it, and you'll get where you want to be.